Welcome to another episode of Tech Tuesday. I have with me Ephraim Ebstein. We are going to be talking cybersecurity, all things tech. And I've got just a little funny story that happened just before we get started. But first, this. Hey guys, Steve Moran here. Ephraim, it's so funny that you dropped off. One of the things that we do when we get started before we go on the air is we talk about what happens if somebody drops off with a power failure or a internet failure, because we've had it a couple of times, and just to prep the guests. And Ephraim, you got on just back in time, but you had one of those exact things happen. And as dependent as we are on tech, we just can't figure that out. So welcome to Tech Tuesday. Let's actually start with a little bit with who you are and what your company does.
Yeah, thank you. Ephraim Ebstein. My company is Fit Solutions, and also we have Fit Cybersecurity, which is our cybersecurity company. And we specialize in IT services and cybersecurity for senior living, SNFs, post-acute, rehab, anything outside of the hospital really is kind of our bread and butter. It makes up over 76% of our business. And we've been doing it for 13 years now.
And and you're based out of San Diego?
Yes. Yeah, so I live in San Diego, and that's really where we got started. Our very first they were actually skilled nursing facilities were in San Diego, Paradise Valley and Balboa Nursing, and those were our very first two. And then we scaled. We had the first customer, you might know them, PAX. They are now on public exchange and so on. But long time ago, they were called Sterling. They had two buildings, and they kind of got started there. And we serviced those buildings, and we actually serviced them really well. We had a great relationship, but we weren't national. We were San Diego local at that time. And then they actually had this vision of going national, of buying all these buildings, which they purchased their first set of buildings in Kentucky, and then they bought another set in Riverside, California. And at that time, they let us go, not because we had done anything wrong, but because they said, well, we need to go with a national provider that can actually service all these locations. And we said, we can do it. But they weren't so sure, and they had met a national provider, so they went with the national provider. But several months into the contract, they never could get rid of us because the national provider was so poor at the job that they kept having to bring us in to fix things. And then they actually paid to get out of that contract, had a long conversation, said, this is what we're doing. Can you scale with us? And we said, absolutely. And that's what we did. So they came back to us, paid to get out of their contract, quite a bit of money too, came with us, and we scaled. And now not only have we went through all the life cycle stages with PAX, we've gone with many other operators, both in assisted living, skilled nursing, kind of the whole gamut. And we've worked with a lot of them, some of them just a couple buildings, others, up to a couple hundred. And we've gone through all the life cycles, all the scales. We've paper clipped and duct taped things together to doing things, having ample budget to really like map out and scale easily. So we've done it all, but we've acted as the IT department. We've acted as an extension of an internal IT department. We've helped them build IT departments in their organization as they kind of go through those growth breakpoints. And then we also have the specialty of cybersecurity, which has kind of evolved over the years. So that's kind of what we do.
Yeah, I don't really want to get into the cybersecurity thing, but as you're talking, one of the things that occurs to me about what you do is that you're sort of like the people who do sound at big events or in churches, right? Nobody really thinks about you or pays attention to you as long as things work well, and then if anything goes wrong, all eyes are on you, right?
Yeah.
So it's a very a very interesting position to be in. So one of the things I guess I'm going to do a little bit of educating of myself here on air, and I'm doing this because I think it may be helpful to some other people as well. Does every living community need a company like you, or can they just kind of go contract with Xfinity and do their own? Why do we need you in the middle?
That's a great question. Operators, when they have, what we find is when they have like a single location or maybe two, maybe three locations, yeah, you can get away with like maybe one of your facilities person or an admin person is really smart and they can kind of help out. Or a lot of times one of the partners is kind of takes over the role and does that, or they pay a guy, I call them trunk slammers, but a guy that just kind of operates and charges a few bucks to come and fix something. So you could totally do that in the beginning, and probably the right thing to do. If I was starting, that's what I would do in the beginning, because it's every dollar counts, right? But what starts to happen once you have more than like 3 buildings, especially once you get 5, 6, 10 buildings, that becomes completely unsustainable. The staff, it becomes, IT problems just become such a loud noise, overwhelming noise, and then the business just can't operate, that they end up going with a partner. And usually the life cycle is you got figuring it out some way in the very beginning to like, okay, we need something. The most logical thing is to find a team that's very good at this, that's skilled at this, can help us like manage and bring order to the organization, try and help standardize and put foundational things in. And then at a certain point, when I would say you get around 60 to 100 buildings, it starts to make a little bit sense to start to bring some of that IT in-house. And so our role starts to change at that time, right? Because at the beginning, we're kind of everything. And then later, we start to become more specialized. In fact, we'll help them plan out the growth of the IT department. And then our role shifts, because you still need strategic partners to do certain things, right? You have to order and procure equipment, licensing. If you have buildings all over the place, you might not be able to get boots on the ground easily to all those locations. So you need a partner to help. Cybersecurity usually is best outsourced to a third party for liability reasons and audit reasons. And so we just kind of shift and we kind of go through all those life cycles.
Oh man, that was great. That was super helpful. So I want to dig a little bit more into what differentiates your firm, and where what I'd like to really do is do some storytelling. So I'd like to have you talk to me about people. You've already told one really good story, a great example of why a company left one provider and in your case, came back to you. And I'd like to spend a little bit more time talking about when people should be thinking, maybe I should be reaching out to you. But before we do that, I actually would like to talk about cybersecurity.
Sure.
As you know, it's been a 3 or 4 years now, but what I assume was a competitor of yours got hacked and got locked out for a few months, and
yeah,
they actually survived, right? I'm not going to name them.
I don't even know how they survived. I thought for sure there's no way they could survive this, and they did. So
I was really surprised about that. I mean, it must, they obviously had some really loyal customers, because it really shut down operations. And so and I only bring this up is just to say that this cybersecurity thing is a huge issue. And I just like to have you talk a little bit about what the risks are and sort of mitigation strategies and those kinds of things.
Yeah. So cybersecurity, I mean, it's such a big word, and it's like, okay, what does that actually mean? Are we talking about written policies? Are we talking about endpoint protection? Are we talking about our firewalls? Are we talking about, some kind of advanced monitoring or user training? So it really is kind of all those things. And when you start, unfortunately, it's an expense that these operators are having to really take seriously. In years past, you could kind of maybe risk it a little bit more, but now we're seeing that if you don't do things correctly, you will have a data breach, you will have an issue, and that can compound if it turns into HIPAA violations, which it always kind of does. And so this industry kind of flew, I feel like, below the radar for a long time. And it was like you'd always hear about hospitals, but you never heard about like a nursing home operator, an assisted living home operator, like getting hammered. But that's not the case now. And so now you're seeing, these major setbacks, and they're very, very costly. And so, taking a look and understanding, okay, what do we have to do as a bare minimum from a compliance standpoint? And then what goes beyond that? And so I'll give you an example. Like, as organizations get bigger, there's especially in the skilled nursing, you have a lot of staff in those buildings, and you have a lot of people working remotely, so you have a lot of connections in. And what we're seeing is the majority of the data breaches that happen start with a breach of somebody's Office 365 or Gmail account. And they get that different ways. They trick people. They will also buy stolen credentials on the dark web. So let's just say a company that some of your employees had logins to gets a data breach. Now all those username and passwords are sold on the dark web. Criminals will buy those lists and have automated tools test them out. So they say, oh, well, I see that Steve works at, Senior Living Foresight. Let me see if this email and password that worked on this site also happened to work to his Office 365. And since people tend to reuse passwords a lot, they get in. They're also very good about getting around, the multi-factor authentication, unfortunately. And so we're seeing lots of data breaches that way. And really the next level to stop that is having monitoring 24/7, so that you see, Steve usually is, logging in from Las Vegas, but now he logged in from Miami. Is he traveling? Is he at a conference? Or did somebody log in with his account from two locations? So, and that's just one example of the email, but that can go through the whole organization with, hundreds of thousands of employees, multiple applications, systems, and being able to kind of monitor and take precautions to actively stop data breaches is kind of the next frontier, unfortunately.
And so does that mean basically monitoring, a company like yours essentially having 24/7 monitoring of that? So
yeah,
you guys
that's
get alerts and the community gets alerts?
Yeah. So what we'll usually do is work with, so we have analysts that will monitor behavior. So you're watching things that are happening, like a login from a strange location, or someone like trying passwords multiple times, they're not working. There's a lot of different scenarios. Someone logging to a new computer for the first time. All those things create alerts. Analysts grab those within an SLA, start an investigation. Now, if they find that it's an attack or a risk, or even worse, a data breach, now they're working with the IT team to start making changes, get the criminal out of the environment before damage is done. And so we had, just to give you an story, on New Year's Eve, we stopped a massive ransomware attack. Criminal got into the environment, got onto some of the servers and started staging some of the scripting. We were able to see the logins and the behaviors, silo the issue, get them out. No ransomware happened. But had that not happened, the IT team, no matter how good they are, they have to sleep. They can't work around the clock. and they're so busy just keeping the environment going and projects and initiatives that they cannot look at thousands of alerts that get produced in a timely manner to stop a data breach within a few minutes. It's just not possible.
So let's talk a little bit about what a ransom is that what did you call ransomware?
Ransomware, yeah, that's one of the most common.
So what does that look like? What does that mean?
Okay, so ransomware, which is one of the most common that we see, it's been around for a while, but now basically criminals, they run an encryption software on your infrastructure, on your computers. They lock up your data, and then they will hold you hostage. And they'll say, people can't log in their computers, they can't get access to anything, their data seems to be gone. And they say, if you pay us, X million dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars, we will give you the key to unencrypt and have your data back. And the criminals now are getting very brazen about it because it's not just like, oh, someone clicked something accidentally. They're finding ways to get into the environment, disable the backups, disable the endpoint protection, run the scripts to encrypt everything. So a lot of times they're in the environment for, it could be hours to days before to stage everything to make it successful. And they'll also start downloading data. And that's part of it because sometimes when the ransomware goes out, one, it's a huge impact to business, right? When that happens, that nobody can work until you get it. But a lot of organizations, if they set up their backups correctly, they'd be able to restore without having to pay. But the criminals know that. And so their second thing is the blackmail option. So they're simultaneously trying to download key data, and they'll say, even if the ransomware didn't work, if you don't pay, we will release publicly that you've been compromised and that this data has been released publicly, because they know that you're going to get some crazy HIPAA fines. So they're trying to blackmail you into paying them so nobody finds out, right? And that's the game they play. And they're very serious. Like these criminals will call if they don't get a response to you with email communication, they'll call your office and has to speak with a partner or has to speak with like an owner, and they'll just conversate with you to work out a business deal. Like they operate like business people essentially, but obviously it's criminal.
Well, and obviously, and clearly they're making hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars.
Millions.
So it really has become big business, which is really scary. And,
yeah.
And of course, they're all overseas, I assume. So there's really no.
Yeah, they're mostly overseas, mostly in Eastern Europe, but other countries as well. I do think they have some employees in the United States, because sometimes you speak to someone that doesn't have any kind of accent. So they staff people too. That's the other thing. You think it's like 1-2 people. These operate like they have high skilled technical people on their team, on payroll. Like it's kind of crazy.
Yeah. And for me, I sort of look at that and I wonder, how does somebody decide to go to work for an organization and think it's okay, knowing that they're ripping off people, right? And I don't know. It's really awful.
Yeah, it's sad. It's terrible. And the problem also is that the if you look at the stats and the numbers, if you were to call the FBI for help, which this would go to the FBI, if it's under $1 million they won't touch it. They will not even open a case. Sorry, tough luck. Call your insurance company. Over $1 million, okay, we'll open a case. We'll start an investigation. But as soon as they start doing a little bit of forensics and they see that the connections are into like these various countries where they don't have any cooperation, or obviously they don't have jurisdiction. Sometimes they have cooperative organizations on the other side, on the law enforcement, that they can work with, but it's usually not even that good when they have it. A lot of the countries, it's just non-existent. They just say, sorry, we can't help you any further. So, and criminals know that. So they're gonna make their jump points through those countries, and that's why it's almost a like punishment-free crime. Like they can get away with it and nothing really happens.
Well, it's almost like, I mean, it's almost like the old West in the United States 150 or 200 years ago, right, in the wild, wild West, where, maybe there was a sheriff in town, but the sheriff was so few and far behind and so behind that everybody had to carry their own gun.
Yes.
To protect their family and themselves. And we're in the sort of same, we're sort of back to that in a cyber basis where you've got to, as a company, you have to have your own weapons to defend against criminals, right?
That's really a perfect analogy. And insurance is very important. I'm not downplaying insurance at all, but insurance carriers are tired of the shock losses, and they get very, their job is to deny claims, right? And find ways that you were incompetent in some way. And so you can't just buy an insurance policy, be like, we're covered now, because chances are if you weren't doing everything else, the insurance carrier is going to be like, well, you were negligent in some way, and you're going to be out in tough luck again. So yeah, but it's just like the Wild West. You got to take care of your own, and if you don't, you're going to be prey to criminals. And trust me, they like little companies. A lot of people think, oh, we're too little. They don't care. They love little companies because usually little companies do not have the infrastructure and protection, and it's just easier for them. So they can pick up, thousands or hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's a lot easier.
Yeah, I could see how little companies would be a great target for lots of reasons. As you described, they're not going to be as sophisticated. As long as they negotiate, I mean, their goal is to get money, right? So they're not going to demand.
So they'll negotiate. Yeah.
Right.
They do research. They figure out like who the owners are. They figure out, and a lot of it's public on LinkedIn and other channels. Yeah. People put it on their website, how many buildings they have. They figure out, what they can probably afford reasonably. And then they probably set it a little bit higher than that, know that they might have to negotiate down, all those things.
Okay. Now that we've had this long, depressing conversation, let's come back to sort of when you look at, well, let me do it this way. So as you bring in new business and you have companies who probably, maybe occasionally, let's actually look at two scenarios. You've got companies where they were doing it on their own and finally decide to come to you. What are the big problems that they sort of throw up their hands and say, okay, it's time to call Fit Solutions and let them help us out? What are those red flags that companies might be thinking about?
Yeah. So the things that are usually, so I love this industry, and there's so much movement. We see operators buying up buildings and building their empires, right? So usually when you start the acquisition process, you buy a cluster of buildings, or you have different firewalls, different maybe email systems that they're on, different data sets. They might even be, one might be on Matrix Care and one might be on PCC. And so now you're trying to support and standardize things, but it also is expensive to rip and replace everything too. So what's the right balance, right? But really, the larger an organization, the bigger their vision is and the bigger their dreams are, they have to set foundational things. Like if you had, 20 buildings and they kind of have a hodgepodge of things, like it's not going to be efficient. It's going to cost you a lot in maintenance and support and all of that. You can make it work, but you want 100 buildings, that's just going to be so, you're going to bleed money. It's going to be so inefficient. So you have to really start strategically saying, okay, what is the right thing to get things standardized? How do we get phone systems standardized across the buildings? How do we get economies of scale that when we do standardize it, we're working with the vendor to get the best pricing? Can we negotiate pricing now, even though it might take us a year, 2 years to roll out phone systems to all our buildings to be on the same platform, something like that, right? So really being strategic, and doing it in a way that is going to help support the business and not drain too much capital. But it usually needs to be done. Now everything runs off the computer, right? Your Wi-Fi, you rely on Wi-Fi. The residents want Wi-Fi. So obviously you have to have internet and backup internet and power generators, and your firewall you want standardization, so you're not dealing with fires all the time. And then where's your data? So a lot of operators also have tried different things. They try to do like virtual desktops across their organizations, or a hybrid system of some sort, or everything on premise. And so once they're dealing with these things, we have the experience to say, we're not going to tell you what to do, but we can show you what other organizations have done that is highly successful, and what they've tried that doesn't work so well. So we can give strong recommendations, and then we can be executors. We can execute on that plan and help make that happen. And because our organization is nationally distributed, when we get new clients, if we don't already have engineering support on the ground, we will hire engineering support on the ground. So that's a really big thing. I think a lot of organizations want to do everything remotely, and it just doesn't. I mean, you can do most things remotely, but the buildings, the communities, they just need sometimes someone to go in there and help and get things operational.
Yeah.
So, important.
I have a friend of mine whose son does some sort of technology support, not in the senior living space, but he lives in Sacramento where I do. And we were talking the other day, and he spends a lot of time on the road, and he'll go in and just need to spend 2 or 3 hours, but it solves problems that you just can't do remotely. So I think that's super important. I've got 2 other questions I want to sort of touch on, at least briefly. We're about out of time, but the first is, where do you see AI playing into this IT and cybersecurity, and how are you looking at AI?
Oh man, it's cool that you asked me that. So we have AI is just taking over everything, and there's a lot of different AI. Most of the AI, here's the problem: every software is being called AI, and it's really not necessarily AI. Everyone is jumping in on the buzzword because they want to sell and they want to be cool. But there is genuine AI that is learning, that is improving. Most of them are feature set type things. And I think in the next year, you're going to see a lot more cool things come out for the organization. Where we have focused AI is we've been creating what we call AI employees, and particularly in assisted living, because it's private pay. And so what we do is we want to help buildings get their occupancy up, because that's really important. A lot of times they're paying, placement services to try and help get occupancy higher. So what we've been doing is creating AI employees that texts with people and starts communications and will resurrect dead opportunities, because people communicate so much on text. And so we can actually have conversations with opportunities on text. Now, it doesn't necessarily take away that you want to talk to people on the phone at all. But sometimes people will look at a building, they'll walk out the door, and then the conversation stops. And so we can create an AI employee that will text and say, hey, how's grandma doing? It's been 2 months. Have you found a good place? That kind of thing. And it'll start a conversation. And the AI is so good that people do not know they're not talking to a human. Well, it'll do emojis, spelling, grammatical errors, not too much to make them look stupid, but enough that it's like the way people talk, or text, I should say. And the whole goal is to get them back into the building and back in conversation with a real human, and try and fill up beds. That's really So that's a big AI push that we've been doing. I know that's probably one little thing, but we've also done it on collections, on payroll type stuff. So, but we're really, for us, that's kind of our niche that we've been doing a lot with, is creating AI employees that can communicate with people via text message, and the person just thinks they're talking to another human. It's that good, and we can help fill up rooms, fill up beds.
Yeah, I really like that a lot. I know there are some ethical issues that I wish we had more time to dig in this. Maybe we should do another show where we just dig into this whole AI and those tools. I do know that in my own company at Foresight, I was looking at some vendors where I had some questions, and they had a chat bot that in this case they actually identified as AI. But I had a great conversation. It answered my questions. It was natural language. It responded back like I felt like I was talking to a human. It was a great experience. And I know that in talking to operators, they're mostly afraid of the AI, that it will say something stupid when you're talking with humans' lives. But I actually think there's so much opportunity there still to be tapped into that gives everybody a better experience and saves money. So
yeah, the thing about new employees say stupid things to your people too.
That's
right?
True. That's right.
So the big difference, between a traditional chatbot and the AI is that AI is very conversational. It can pivot on the conversational. It's not an if then. If they say this, then say that, right? It's much more like, imagine you hired a new employee and you say, hey, your job is to text people. This is how I would like you to speak with people. And then you look at the conversations, you're like, you know what? Maybe be a little, more caring. Like, the people really care about their loved ones. Instead of just saying, how is your patient? Say, how is your loved one doing? How's your grandmother doing? Right? Like, so you train it to speak in a manner that you would train an employee. And just like a new employee in the beginning, the new employee is going to be a little rough, but you're going to want to train them and give them guidance, and then they're going to be better. It's the exact same way with the AI, and it's going to learn and it's going to get better. And ideally, you go through a training period before you allow it to communicate with clients, customers, patients, all that kind of thing.
Cool. I love that. One more quick question. We're sort of already out of time, but I want to just touch bases on this. One of the things I see people facing in their own lives, and I'm sure it's true in companies, is you buy some software tool and try it out and it doesn't work, and you just keep paying and paying and paying. Do you help with that?
Yeah, definitely. So we one of the first things you're going to want to do when we go into an environment is take a look at all their bills. Is there things they're not using? And then even of the things they are using, like internet, a lot of times people will sign up for an internet connection, right? And 5 years have gone by. They never renegotiated it. They didn't know if they signed a new 3-year contract with a vendor, or maybe, if you have multiple buildings, you can, work with an aggregator to get some better pricing, or you can work, with VoIP phone systems. Hey, we got this many buildings. If we commit all the buildings within this time period, could we get better pricing per line or per handset or whatever, as if we already had the whole thing, even though we have to roll out over 24 months.
Right.
So you could do creative things, but you want to look at all the software licenses, everything they've purchased. What are they spending? Are they like on Microsoft Azure for their central, and their bill is through the roof? Can they go to some kind of private cloud, reduce costs there? Look at all the vendors. That's a really big thing, because once again, it's expensive to run an IT team. It's super expensive, all the licensing, the hardware. It's, I dare say, one of their biggest expenses to running the building after payroll and taxes, probably. I don't know, but it's up there. So, you got to look at it closely. You don't want to cut corners, but you want to be as efficient as you possibly can.
Yeah, perfect. Great conversation. I wish we had more time. I appreciate you joining me. We'll have to do this again. Really like to do more on the AI stuff. It's an area I'm really passionate
Absolutely.
about.
Let's do it.
So let's do that. But Ephraim, thank you for joining us. If you're struggling with your IT, you ought to reach out to him. You ought to reach out to their team. Jada, thank you in the background here for making this all happen seamlessly. And I guess it makes you like IT and sound people, right? You only get blamed if things go wrong, even if it's not usually your fault.
Yeah.
So, anyway, thank you very much. And if you are here at CES, I'd love to connect with you. Ran into 4 or 5 people I knew last evening, which is pretty cool when they're most of the 140,000 people who are here, I know I don't know. And so we'll have some great stories here as well. Thank you very much. Ephraim, hang on for just a few minutes after we're off the air.